Most relationships do not end because love dies. They end because love is misunderstood, both in what it is and in what it was never meant to do. What people describe as falling out of love is rarely a collapse. It is a transition that was misinterpreted as failure. The disappointment that follows feels personal, emotional, and confusing. It is not. It is structural. The system behaved exactly as designed. The expectation was wrong. Modern romantic culture treats love as a state, something you enter, remain inside, and are meant to preserve indefinitely. This framing guarantees disappointment. What people experience at the beginning of a relationship is not a foundation, it is an amplifier, a temporary chemical configuration that alters perception, tolerance, and motivation. When that configuration changes, as it always does, the relationship must operate without assistance. Most relationships were never built to do that. Early romantic love is driven by neurochemical activity. Dopamine increases sensitivity to novelty. Oxytocin and vasopressin increase bonding. Cortisol increases urgency and focus. Together, these changes produce heightened attention, emotional intensity, perceived significance, and increased tolerance for friction. This is not accidental. It is a biological initiation mechanism. Its function is to accelerate attachment, not sustain it. The system compresses time. It allows two people to bypass caution, absorb inconvenience, and tolerate uncertainty long enough to form a bond. It is not designed to last. This chemical configuration cannot be maintained indefinitely in any stable nervous system. Reward circuits adapt, novelty fades, attention normalizes. The timeline varies, but the outcome is universal. As chemistry declines, the subjective experience changes. Intensity softens, obsession dissolves, emotional momentum slows. Nothing has gone wrong. The system has completed its function. Most people interpret this transition as loss. They believe love has faded, passion is gone, or something is missing. This interpretation is understandable, but incorrect. What ended was not attachment. What ended was chemical amplification. The relationship has shifted phases. The problem emerges when a temporary state is treated as a permanent structure. During the early phase, chemistry performs structural labor. It absorbs friction. It smooths misalignment. It compensates for inefficiency. This allows incompatible systems to function temporarily. Differences feel manageable. Irritations feel minor. Conflicts feel solvable, not because they are, but because the cost is subsidized. When the subsidy ends, the true structure is revealed. People often say relationships change after the honeymoon phase. They do not. The support system is removed. Without chemical amplification, the relationship must now operate under normal conditions: routine, stress, resource allocation, repetition, and disagreement. At this stage, structural compatibility becomes decisive. Relationships that relied on chemistry to manage friction begin to fail. Nothing new has appeared. Nothing has been lost. The system is simply operating without assistance. This transition is where many relationships end. The decline in intensity is labeled boredom. The normalization of emotion is labeled distance. The exposure of incompatibility is labeled growing apart. In reality, the system has lost its compensating mechanism. Without chemistry performing the work, misalignment becomes expensive. Some relationships persist beyond this phase. They are often described as mature love, deep connection, or long-term attachment. The difference is not emotional superiority, it is structural adequacy. These relationships do not depend on sustained chemical intensity to function. Coordination, trust, and reciprocity remain viable without amplification. Stability replaces intensity. Romantic culture reinforces the wrong model. Stories focus on initiation. Chemistry is portrayed as destiny. Intensity is framed as proof. The post-chemical phase is rarely shown except as decline or compromise. This trains people to expect impermanence. Normalization feels like loss because it has been framed that way. Many people respond to this phase by trying to restore the initial feeling. They seek novelty. They escalate experiences. They replace partners. This creates a predictable cycle. Attraction forms. Chemistry amplifies. Commitment increases. Chemistry fades. dissatisfaction appears. The relationship ends. The conclusion becomes personal. The structure remains unchanged. The problem is not partner quality. It is phase misinterpretation. Chemical attraction is optimized for initiation, not maintenance. Treating it as a maintenance mechanism creates instability. No amount of desire overrides biological adaptation. No level of insight prevents normalization. The system does not respond to belief. When intensity fades, effort is often applied in the wrong place. People try to revive feelings instead of evaluating structure. They assume the problem is emotional rather than temporal. Effort applied at the wrong level produces confusion. Post-chemical attachment feels quieter. It is not exciting, not urgent, not obsessive. It feels reliable, integrated, predictable. This is often misclassified as insufficient because intensity has been mistaken for depth. People often say relationships become work over time. What changed is not effort demand. It is chemical assistance. The system is now operating at baseline. Processes that were once effortless now require coordination. This feels like labor only because the early phase was artificially light. The withdrawal of chemical amplification exposes true cost. There is a fundamental incompatibility here. Systems cannot optimize for novelty and stability simultaneously. Novelty requires unpredictability. Stability requires predictability. The same behaviors that maximize excitement undermine coordination. This is why chasing intensity destabilizes long-term attachment. Modern romantic culture prioritizes novelty. Intensity becomes validation. Stability is framed as settling. Under these conditions, long-term satisfaction becomes rare, not because people are incapable, but because the system rewards impermanence. This is often internalized as personal failure. It is not. Feelings do not govern structure. Structure governs how feelings appear. Emotional states respond to configuration. They do not override it. No internal feeling can suspend biological limits. Long-term attachment is not an extension of early attraction. It is a different system with different governing variables. Confusing the two guarantees disappointment. When chemistry is expected to fade, its decline becomes informational rather than threatening. The transition is no longer collapse, it is data. The relationship can be evaluated accurately. Long-term attachment is rare in systems that treat initiation states as foundations. The structure cannot support that load. The impossibility lies in expecting permanent intensity from a system designed for transition. Love does not disappear. The amplifier turns off. What remains is the structure. If the structure works, attachment stabilizes. If it does not, the relationship collapses. The outcome was never emotional. It was architectural.